Operation processed successfully, baby.
You're kidding me.
Nope.
All right, so USA Ghana.
Yep, USA versus Ghana. Oh, man, imagine if I f***ed that up and just bought some irrelevant team in Manaus.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com. Happy Wednesday morning and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Travel Podcast. I'm Eric Paquette here with AJ Dunn, and today we are going to be talking about American Express membership rewards. We've also got some big news, unannounced changes to American Airlines and US Airways, so we're going to cover that, talk about what it means for travel hackers from a higher level perspective. You can find show notes for today's episode at abroaders.com/use Amex. Buddy, early morning today. Rise and shine. Good to have you. How you doing?
Man, a little bit. Yeah, man. I'm doing all right, hanging in there, man. That 5:30 wake-up time is just, I'm not a morning person, so that's pretty early for me.
It's definitely tough, but well worth it. For those of you guys who don't know, World Cup tickets were on sale this morning. Last round of tickets available. And the waiting line, a virtual waiting room was definitely packed. It took over a half an hour to get in there and have access to start buying them. Once we were able to start purchasing or trying to put the tickets in the cart, all kinds of crap. I got at least a couple of my credit cards triggered fraud alerts, and it just seemed like we were never going to be able to get this booked. Fortunately, AJ paid off getting up at 5:30 this morning, and he was actually able to purchase and pay for some tickets. But we didn't just get two, did we?
No, we did not. Speaking of that extra ticket, we're going to be giving away that third ticket to one of you listeners. So if you are interested in going to the USA versus Ghana game in Natal, Brazil, go to abroaders.com/winworldcup.
All right, so speaking of booking with points and miles, a couple of things that we took action on this morning and I think should be helpful if any of you guys are taking a look at trying to get to the World Cup. Availability is definitely filling up. I booked my international flight a little while back, a couple of months ago, for the outbound to get to Rio de Janeiro around June 6th. There's still some availability. AJ is still looking to get his inbound, but a couple of general principles to keep in mind if you're looking to use miles to get to the World Cup. First, take care of the international part first. There's still some decent availability on American and United going from major U.S. cities like New York, Chicago, Miami. So you may have to position to get there, but figure out that international part first, your outbound to Brazil and your return back home, and then worry about the little flights getting to the World Cup. And a couple of tips there. The major Brazilian carriers that are operating between the different city hosts for the World Cup games are Gol, which is a partner of Delta, and Iberia, which you can also use your British Airways Avios points on Iberia. That was something I looked into today. Our flight from Fortaleza to Natal, all the flights were extremely expensive, looking at like $400 US. So I was able to move some British Airways points to Iberia. I haven't actually finished booking it yet, but it looks like we're going to end up paying just a couple of bucks and about 20,000 miles to get AJ and I both from Fortaleza to Natal to check out the game of Ghana versus the United States. The other carrier is TAM. They just moved into One World Alliance, and so they're also partners with American and British Airways. There's a lot of good opportunities there. Last thing to keep in mind is make sure you check the prices. I kind of assumed everything would be ridiculous since it was for World Cup, and I was able to get my flight from Salvador to Fortaleza for the first game we're going to be seeing, which is Uruguay versus Costa Rica. That one was less than $60 US. So make sure you check. Don't burn miles if you can buy the flight cheap.
Yeah, man, exactly. Speaking of Brazil in many locations, I was fooling around Google Analytics and I pulled up our top 10 locations and thought this was pretty interesting. So obviously US is number one, then Brazil, then the UK, Indonesia, Philippines, Australia, Vietnam, Canada, Thailand, and Germany. And by the way, those are ranked as far as unique visitors. So Eric going to the website 5,000 times doesn't inflate Brazil stats. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Good to know, man. Yeah, I bet you there's a lot of DC representation there. I've seen a lot of Southeast Asia. So super cool. We're glad to have you guys with us. Thanks for all the support.
Yeah, and speaking of travel, if you head over to abroaders.com, we've added our 2014 future travel destinations. So in the navigation, just click on Abroaders 2014 travel map if you're curious where we're going. Obviously, shoot us a note if you ever want to meet up, so you'll be able to see where we will be going for the rest of the year.
Yeah, very cool. I think that page is an awesome addition, man. Glad you put that up. So thanks for working on that. And if you are going to be in one of those same locations, just shoot us an email. We would love to meet up. Always a great time to meet up with fellow abroaders anywhere else in the world. Another addition to the website is that we have published our first program page master resource at abroaders.com/programs/AAdvantage. This is American Airlines frequent flyer program. And this page is going to be a framework for a lot of future resources. So we're building out these pages on the back end right now for all the major airlines. Right now, I think we've got Delta, United, US Airways, and British Airways pretty well built, but I think American's the only one published at the moment. And the link is in the show notes, so please check it out and let us know what you think, because the goal here is to provide summaries of partners, earning opportunities, redeeming, what the phone number is, a link to the website where you can book, and those nasty booking and routing rules, like how much it's going to cost, what happens if you change, can you change your flight during or after travel starts, will they let you do a stopover or a one-way? So we're basically summarizing all that info, and we're going to keep it up to date. So it should be a great resource. We'd love to hear your feedback on that. Moving on to some big changes, and also related to American Airlines, they just made some pretty huge shifts overnight and without any warning whatsoever. I got word of this, I think, around right before the weekend. So last Friday or Thursday, this came out. And essentially, they raised a bunch of prices, and they eliminated and changed some of the best routing rules and completely abolished one of the coolest award charts. So the big takeaway here is these types of changes can happen. In the terms and conditions, the airline loyalty programs let you know that they don't have to give you advance notice. And so it's really important to remember that you don't want to sit and hoard miles. It's earn and burn. Apply for cards, get those miles, and as soon as you know what trip you're going to take, you want to book them. Points are subject to inflation. This is not like, governments managing a real currency where they're trying to be responsible. The company gets into competition with another airline and they decide that they want to print miles. That's going to put upward pressure on prices, and a lot of times it can happen overnight.
Yeah, man, exactly. These changes can happen without notice. Travel hacking isn't completely fair play, so you've been warned. So just be prepared in the future. But, on the bright side, just like some of these obstacles, there's always big opportunities. There's always huge bonuses around the corner. So, for example, United and Delta, they did a couple price increases in 2014, and Southwest as well. They all gave advance notice. So that was nice, but that is not required. So like Eric said, American made these changes overnight, effective immediately. So, the key takeaway, like Eric said, earn and burn. So what do you say we get into the details of what's changed?
Awesome. So, well, not so awesome, but let's do it anyways. The first one is that the American Airlines Explorer Award chart was completely eliminated. So this is the distance-based chart. Previously, you were able to fly up to 16 segments with unlimited stopovers. So I was actually planning on using my 100,000 points from the City Elite Executive MasterCard sign-up to book a trip that basically went from the U.S. to Europe with a bunch of different stopovers and on to Asia. It was a really valuable chart because of those unlimited stopovers, but it did go away. Basically very few people actually booked those tickets, and so American figured they could just get rid of the chart without a whole bunch of people noticing. A lot of the travel hacking community is up in arms, but you got to remember we're a big minority, or rather a very small minority in the scheme of all the people using miles. So there's no more distance-based chart from American. It's now just zone-based redemptions.
Yep. Another one is the North American Gateway stopovers eliminated. So this doesn't really affect a regular itinerary, but it does eliminate a really cool hack. So this basically allowed you to stop in a cool North American city like New York or Vancouver on the way to another continent, or on the way home, it let you tack on a free flight up to a year later, basically anywhere. So home for me is Detroit, so I could arrive at home in Detroit and then get a free one-way to, say, Alaska or San Francisco. So that's been eliminated as well.
Yeah, it definitely was a cool hack, but there's going to be a lot of ongoing changes because of this U.S. Airways and American merger. So don't be too concerned. We're going to find the new opportunities and be sharing those with you guys in the near future. The last big change with American Airlines is that they made some pretty substantial price increases for their Anytime Awards. Now, as you might remember from previous episodes, we talked about different award pricing tiers. And American has Saver Awards, which are by far the best deal, and the cheaper flights. Those are how AJ and I have been getting to South America for either 20,000 or 30,000 miles one way using American Miles. So those Saver Awards did not change, which is wonderful. So that's the really key part where you're going to get the most value travel hacking. You probably shouldn't have been booking Anytime Awards anyways, unless you really desperately needed them. But you should be aware now the Anytime Awards went up a lot. So instead of paying like double, so instead of paying $60,000 for an Anytime when the Saver Award would have cost you $30, now it's going to be like $75 or maybe even $110 depending on which new tier you're in. They basically added a bunch of complication. Bottom line, stick to Saver Awards for American Airlines redemptions.
Yeah, and if you're flexible on your dates, I mean, the savers are almost always there. Now, moving on to U.S. Airways, they changed their 90,000-mile business class redemption to North Asia, and that's increased to 110,000 miles now. So an extra 20,000 miles to do business class to North Asia.
Yeah, and remember, U.S. Airways just moved to One World, so probably the best business class product, one of the best in the world, is on Cathay Pacific. So that's still a really good deal, even at 110,000 miles. That's pretty competitive with the pricing across all the other frequent flyer programs. This is obviously a bummer that it's not 90,000 anymore, but it really illustrates why you don't want to sit on your miles. I have a bunch of US Airways miles. I was planning on using them for a business class redemption to DC BKK, but I didn't do it yet, and so now it's going to cost me an extra 20,000 miles. But the good news is U.S. Airways did not change the first class price, which was $120,000. So now the difference is only 10, and I'm going to be riding all the way up front instead of just in business class. So that should be pretty cool. All right, well, let's get inspired.
Yeah, so this week's inspiration has to do with an event in the future. The Dynamite Circle is having their annual conference in Bangkok this October. And for those of you that don't know, the Dynamite Circle, it's a primarily online community of entrepreneurs who are mostly location independent. And I say primarily online because the bulk of the collaboration interaction, that's online, but there are meetups called Juntos, and obviously there's the big throwdown in Bangkok each year, which has just been awesome. And as far as, personal business breakthroughs go, this event served as a huge springboard for Eric and I last year. There's just so many smart, driven, successful, global, travel-minded people all in one spot. So definitely looking forward to that and excited to see what I can get out of it this year.
All right, AJ, let's get into the core content for today on using American Express membership reward points. Before we dig in, I want to note that we did quite a bit of research for today's episode, and I want to tip my hat to some phenomenal bloggers in the travel hacking community who put out awesome content every day. We've linked to all their resources and all the stuff that we use to get this material ready for you guys in the show notes. And if you want to learn on your own, if you're serious about getting better and maximizing opportunities, I highly encourage you guys to subscribe to some of these on your RSS. You're going to learn a ton, and it can be really fun. I have to say it's definitely pretty addictive. So just add a couple of these to your RSS, and you're going to learn a lot about travel hacking in general.
Yeah, man, there's some pretty dominant content. One more thing, too. We've done our best due diligence to be accurate, but there's a chance there's a mistake here or there because of some out-of-date information, because things change frequently. We've, used some blog posts from a couple years old. So if you do happen to find a mistake, please reach out to us on the website. Just go to the contact form that you can get to from the main navigation and let us know if there's something we missed.
Great. Yeah, I'd love to hear that feedback. We're going to try very hard to keep information up to date on the site in general. We want to kind of be the aggregation hub where we get all the most up-to-date information and put that together by monitoring these blogs. So if you ever find anything that seems to be wrong on the site, let us know. Let's get going here. So Amex, to recap, is one of the most valuable types of points because you can transfer generally at a 1-to-1 ratio to 16 airlines and 4 different hotels. And the importance of this flexibility shouldn't be overlooked because with airline-specific points, like your American miles, for example, you're at the mercy of any changes that program makes. And you can be completely screwed if you were planning for an award and that award, like the American Explorer flights, the distance chart gets eliminated overnight. There's nothing you can do. With Amex and other transferable currencies like Chase and Starwood Preferred Guests, you are insulated from those types of changes. Any one partner can completely destroy their pricing or change a bunch of rules, and it doesn't completely undermine the value of your Amex points because you can always move points to a different partner if one of the programs makes negative changes.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And well, before we talk about redemption, let's talk about how we can earn these membership rewards. So Amex, they offer a couple business and personal credit cards that can earn these membership rewards. The key here is to utilize both personal and the business version of each card. And also remember, you do not have to own a business in order to have a business credit card. Currently, there's the Amex Gold and the Amex Platinum. They both have a personal and a business version. And one thing to note about them is they do have annual fees. The Gold card has an annual fee of $175 a year, and the Platinum is at $450 a year.
Yeah, great to be aware of. Another thing you should keep in mind, there are some really great benefits with those fees, so you're not necessarily paying outright the full fee. A lot of it gets rebated in terms of different coupons and other benefits that you get. So it's definitely something to look into. Sometimes that $175 fee is waived for the first year, so you should probably wait until you get a great offer. And speaking of offers, typically the bonuses on those cards range anywhere from 25 to 50,000 points. We've actually seen just a few months ago a one-day 100,000 point sign up. So there are some big ones that can occasionally come along. If you want to stay in the loop, you should sign up for our email list. We do send out all of our members a once a month rundown of all the credit card offers, the best ones for each month. If you're looking for more detail or alerts in real time when, say that 100,000 point bonus hits, you should definitely check out our coaching and churn planning services with the Abroaders Premium service.
Yeah, so we talked about airline alliances back in episode 6, the introduction to redemption, which if anyone's interested, you can find that at abroaders.com/redemption. So airlines use partnerships and alliances with other airlines to expand their route network and serve more customers. And keep in mind, there's 3 major alliances. There's the Star, One World, and SkyTeam. So you can use United Miles to book a ticket with any of their partner airlines, for example, Lufthansa, Thai, ANA, or Air Canada. What this means with respect to Amex is that there's a massive multiplication effect for the 16 airline transfer partners. You can book a ticket for a seat on nearly 100 different airlines.
Another big benefit of the Amex transfer system is that you're not limited to your own frequent flyer accounts. So for example, British Airways and Aeroplan, which is Air Canada's program, are both transfer partners. And if AJ had an Aeroplan account and I had a bunch of Amex miles, I'd be able to transfer my Amex points to his Aeroplan account. And so you can do that for friends, family members, and complete strangers. The process is pretty simple to be able to link accounts. And so that's a really huge deal because with airline-specific miles, if I had Aeroplan miles, I couldn't just transfer those to AJ's Aeroplan account. Typically, sharing miles incurs some really big fees, and it's just not worth it to do. But Amex, you can transfer to other people, which comes into play a lot if you're just a few miles short. Your buddy's trying to book a flight to join you on a cool trip, and he's 5,000 or 10,000 miles short. You can move your Amex points over to help out, and he can buy you lunch or whatever for the week that you're traveling. The other thing that you should keep in mind is that often there are transfer bonuses with Amex. These are a little bit less frequent as of the last, say, 12 months or so, but Amex does run bonuses ranging from 15 to 60%, sometimes even a little higher. And so that's a great way to get your miles to go even further. You can really stretch if you're able to time your transfer to a point where they're having a certain transfer bonus. You're going to get those automatically when you move points from Amex to that transfer partner.
Yeah, man, I like the idea of giving miles to strangers, a little frequent flyer philanthropy. Now, as far as making these transfers goes, and the nuts and bolts of it, we've linked to 2 tutorial videos from the Abroaders YouTube channel and those will walk you through linking partner accounts and moving the miles from Amex. Here's a couple other things to note. When you're making these transfers, normally they're instantaneous, but there are a couple carriers where it can take up to 4 or 5 days, Aeromexico Club Premier being one of them. And what does it cost you? There can be some costs, but it's not going to exceed $99. So when you're transferring to a U.S. carrier, there's a very small percentage tax fee per miles, but like I said, it can't exceed $99. So really not a huge deal if you're going to redeem an international flight.
Great to know. We also have a link in the show notes to a table that's got all the transfer times. I would say, 13 or 12 of them are instant, and the rest of them are like 1 or 2 days, with Aeromexico being the outlier at 4 to 5.
Okay, so we've talked about earning. Now we're talking about redeeming. One thing that you really need to keep in mind when redeeming with Amex points is the fuel surcharges and taxes. So that is the big drawback to Amex, is that a lot of their transfer partners pass on fuel surcharges when you redeem an award. When fuel surcharges aren't a factor, like with American or United, you can expect to pay between $100 to $200 in taxes for an international flight. When airlines pass fuel charges on to the customer, award tickets can cost $800 to $1,200, which is often more than buying a coach ticket outright.
Yeah, in those situations, it pretty much doesn't make any sense to use miles for economy. So it's one thing that's sort of generally true, that Amex points are probably much better if you're after the premium cabin awards like business or first class. The next thing we're going to do, we're going to get into some of the details on a few of the major, most popular, and most useful transfer partners for Amex, and try and walk you through what you can expect more or less with those fuel taxes that are going to get added on. $1,000 is a joke if you're going to be getting an economy flight, but if you're booking into first class and you're looking at $1,000 for a $6,000 ticket, that can be a great deal. So just make sure you do your homework. We're going to try and give you a little bit of an idea of what to expect. One general rule to keep in mind is that the fuel surcharges actually depend mostly on the airline that you end up flying. And so when we tell you that an airline like Aeroplan passes on fuel surcharges, it means that if the owner of the plane that you're flying on at the end of the day has fuel surcharges, Aeroplan passes them through. So that's a kind of a subtle distinction, but hopefully that'll make a little more sense as we get into some examples here.
All right, man. So let's give everyone, a decent idea more or less what they're going to be dealing with each of these partners and some of the benefits, possible fuel surcharges they'll face, and certain situations they would use each partner. Let's start it off with Aeroplan.
Okay, so Aeroplan is the program for Air Canada, and they have a zone-based chart. They do allow for one-way awards at half the price of round trip, and they allow open jaw or stopover. I'm not sure if they allow both on one itinerary. A lot of the resources we were looking at said that they do, but the website and the booking agent I talked to on the phone wouldn't let me. So we'll have to leave that up in the air. Let us know if you guys know which way that ends up falling. What about fuel surcharges? I think these guys are pretty bad.
Yep, it's a big factor here. So you can expect to pay between $550 up to $1,000 for a round trip award. So that's pretty hefty.
Definitely. Ideal for business or first class redemptions. Economy, you're probably better off looking at a different Amex transfer partner. I know that almost all of the times that I've used Aeroplan for our booking service to help out clients, they were looking at business or first class. And there are some great Star Alliance partners that have really cool business class products. Another thing just to mention, we do have a list of some of the ways that you can avoid airline surcharges. It's basically a chart. It's linked in the show notes. So check that out as well. There are a couple of Star Alliance carriers that you can avoid. Even booking with Aeroplan, you can still get away without such high fuel surcharges. Moving on to ANA, that is a Japan-based airline, all Nippon Airways, and they have a distance-based chart. They do not allow one-way awards, so you got to pay for the round trip, but they do offer 3 stopovers per award, and that's a really good value. So there's some pretty cool routing rules. They do allow open jaws with a few restrictions. And what's the fuel surcharge situation, AJ?
All right, this one is a little tricky. So there's some good ways to avoid fuel surcharges. A few airlines you could book with would be Air Canada, Air New Zealand, United, U.S. Airways. But once again, it's tricky. There are some exceptions, so it's not a blanket statement guarantee, but normally you're going to avoid fuel surcharges with those airlines. And it is good to note, A couple airlines like Brussels and Scandinavian, they've got significantly higher fuel surcharges that are in the $500 to $1,000 range, kind of similar to Aeroplan.
Moving on to Delta. Delta has a zone-based chart. They do allow a stopover and an open jaw on a round-trip award. At the moment, they are not allowing one-way awards, but it is rumored that that's coming soon. So, in fact, by soon, I think we mean 2015. They made some nasty changes that a lot of SkyMiles elites are a little bit upset about. So we're going to see. It's going to be interesting to watch what happens with Delta. Historically, they're not a very valuable currency because their award chart has been pretty high price-wise. But, some of these changes with United and what looks like is going to happen with American and U.S., some of the rest of them might catch up.
Yeah, there still are some decent routes in there. That's how I got to Brazil last year. But you make really good points. As far as the fuel surcharges go, there's a couple ways you can avoid them with Delta. If your flight originates from the U.S. or Asia, then you're good to go and you will avoid those hefty fuel surcharges.
Good to know. On the plus side, most Delta flights are originating in the U.S., so you're not going to have to worry about fuel surcharges there. On the downside, Delta does not allow you to redeem for first class seats on their partners. So you're limited to business class. If you want to fly first class on one of their SkyTeam partners, you're going to need to move points to a different program. Next one is Singapore KrisFlyer. These guys have a zone-based chart. They do offer one-way awards, and they do allow stopovers and open jaws. Again, there's a little bit of complexity with the stopover and open jaw rules for KrisFlyer. We're also linking in the show notes to a chart of stopovers, open jaws, and one way. So that table is pretty cool. I was not aware of that one before starting to research for today, so definitely check that out. One note, so there's very high surcharges, but the reason that we're including this one is that Singapore Airlines blocks first and suites class award space to their Star Alliance partners. And so what that means is that if you have points, say, in United, you can book on Singapore Airlines and pay very low fuel surcharges, but you're not going to be able to get a first-class ticket. You're going to be limited to business at best. And Singapore Airlines has one of the nicest first class in the world, and they also have suites class, which is pretty much just a big FU. You get a shower on board and a bed. So if you're looking for some pretty Showtime luxury,
it's like a studio apartment.
Yeah,
it's like the size of a New York studio.
So the bottom line here is you actually need to have points in Singapore Airlines KrisFlyer program to be able to book those suites and first class awards.
As far as fuel surcharges go, there, like Eric said, they're pretty hefty. Economy short haul, they'll keep it under $300, business under $350, and for a long haul economy, $500 or less. In business, it'll be $1,000 or less.
Gotcha. All right. Next one is Cathay Pacific Asia Miles. They have a distance-based chart. They do allow one-way awards, and the fuel surcharges, these ones, I know that we found a few that are relatively cheap, but they also can be high. These guys are in the One World Alliance, so this is a nice change of pace for the ones that we've been talking about previously. A lot of those have been in Star Alliance, so these guys have different partners, including American and British Airways, but I know that there are some fuel surcharges. I think it really matters in terms of which route you're looking at. I know for sure on Flyer Talk, which is one of the major forums, there's people talking about surcharges up to 1,000 or more for Cathay awards. So definitely don't transfer without pricing out the award. If you're going to move your Amex points, make sure you price the award first. Either call and talk to an agent or do it on the website because you want to know what you're in for. You certainly don't want to think you're paying 140 and find out you're paying 900. So check that out. Last but not least, we're going to cover British Airways. These guys, Avios has a very, very unique distance-based chart that's priced by segment. So the more stopovers, the more your ticket's going to cost. You are allowed stopovers, but they price it city to city. So every time you fly a new city, every time you touch the ground, you have to recalculate and add a new piece of the price on. So it definitely does get more expensive, but it's great for short hauls, and I highly recommend keeping those in mind, especially the short haul flights that are going to be expensive. We talked a little earlier in the episode about World Cup tickets. Their partners, TAM, are going to be covering all of the cities for the World Cup in Brazil, and there's a lot of other opportunities, short haul flights from New York to Toronto, New York to Montreal, tons of little opportunities there. And now that U.S. Airways is joining American in One World, you're going to have a lot of options in the U.S. as well. So definitely take a look. Don't overlook the British Airways option.
Yeah, British Airways alone can have some nasty fuel surcharges, but you can't avoid them with a few select partners. A few examples would be LAN, American Airlines, Alaska. Are there any others?
Iberia and Aer Lingus are probably the two ways to get to Europe and avoid. British Airways pretty much just charges those fuel surcharges on their own flights, and those are really nasty. We're talking at least $1,000, and London has some sort of arrogant tax on their airport in general, and so Heathrow, which is where all British Airways flights are going to connect, has something else that gets tacked on in addition to the fuel surcharges. So you're probably looking at least $1,000 to get a flight to Europe on British Airways planes, but their partners American and Aer Lingus and Iberia will all get you to Europe with very minimum, keep it under $200 in fuel surcharges. LAN's a great option for Latin America. And now that TAM has jumped ship into One World, you can also get direct flights from New York, Chicago, and a couple other places to Brazil. So definitely British Airways is still a really valuable program and one that should be among your first to consider when you're looking at Amex transfer partners.
Well, hey man, that wraps it up. You got anything else as far as Amex membership rewards?
No, thanks for being with us, guys. Don't forget, hop over to abroaders.com/winworldcup. We're going to announce a close date coming up soon, but for now, just get over there, get on the list. We're looking forward to seeing you in Brazil.
All right, sweet man. I almost forgot the international jam of the week, so I've got a few options for you, mate. We can go with a happy-go-lucky dance pop song from a multi-ethnic group of Swedes. We got a smooth alt-rock song from some Aussies with catchy guitar play, or a chorus-rich, full-sounding alt-pop song from some UK guys with a really jubilant synth line. So, what you feeling?
Let's get jubilant, man. We just got tickets to the World Cup.
All right, sweet, man. All right, so the song is Flaws by Bastille. These guys have given it a go like 4 different times. It was initially released in like 2011, 2012. Finally came back in 2013, hit some charts, and they're re-releasing it again. But I've really been into this one lately, so I hope you enjoy.
Travel safe, guys. We will see you next week.
Ciao.
We'll see that we need them to be who we are. Without them we'd be doomed. There's a hole in my soul. I can't feel it, I can't feel it. There's a hole in my soul. Can you feel it, can you feel it?
Hey Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to Eric or AJ at abroaders.com. We will see you next week.
Dig them out.